What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Alexander, obviously. So let's have a different conversation than we usually have about political violence and mimetic escalation. So for those who are wondering, why am I talking about this? On my timeline this morning, since I follow various political people, I saw a number of posts regarding the sort of Antifa violence in Portland. Andy Nago, he's a journalist, he was attacked and actually hospitalized. He got injured pretty good. And there's the usual sort of talk of, this is atrocious. There's the sort of the left side political spectrum talk that he had it coming. And, various rationalizations are being made as to why the violence is deserved. And it's okay because the person deserves it because of what they said. And there's also the calls to reason that we shouldn't be violent towards each other, and this is terrible, and this will keep escalating. And the unfortunate reality is that the only way this ends, any of this ends, is the bullets. It's all going to end with a bullet. That's how it's going to end. Right now, in the United States, and across much of the Western world, you have the polarization of roughly approximately two sides. You have the left, obviously, you have the right. Okay, you guys know this. Now, the right and the left, they are locked into what is called a mimetic struggle, a mimetic game of escalation, meaning that the only way for them to keep beating the other side is to keep escalating the behavior. They have to keep copying each other and one-upping each other. That's the only way to win the game, so to speak. When groups start competing for positions of power, they are competing for the same thing. If you have two people competing to be top dog, their actions are more or less going to be very similar because the role of the alpha or the role of the dictator or the role of the ruling political party, its role is to rule. Its role is to rule. Henceforth, you have to essentially be a mirror of your opponent and be like them, but also attempt to outdo them. So it's sort of akin to almost being like the little children. Let's say they get into a fight with each other, and they keep sort of escalating the fight. It starts off with like shoving the person, and then you get shoved back, and then you try to hit them, and they try to hit you, and then you bite them, and then they try and bite you, and before you know it, the kids are on the floor fighting with each other, trying to tear each other apart. It's like, what happened? There's mimetic escalation. People always copy each other's behavior, and when people are competing for a certain role in the hierarchy, their behaviors, aside from being all the same in regards to the competitors, they're going to attempt to outdo one another. Now, right now, in the political world, and I shouldn't say political, but in the social sphere of this overall human society, you have the two sides. You have the right, you have the left. The left, especially the far left elements of it, they believe that they have a moral high ground, that their actions of violence are just and good because the right is evil. They believe that. You have people that emphatically 100% believe that they are on the side of truth, justice, human goodness, and that the side they're fighting against is corrupt and truly evil and deserves to die. When you have people who have committed themselves to beliefs in good and evil, and they believe that they have the side of good, there is no stopping them. You're not going to convince them. They are beyond reason that way, because why would you reason with evil? So there's no dialogue, there's no discussion to be had. This is nothing that two parties, so to speak, can sit at the table and say, oh, I see the error of my ways and I recognize your points and we need to calm down. That's not happening. That's flat out, it's just not happening. Now, the right, and I'm trying to keep this sort of as general as possible, the right does not position itself as having a moral high ground so much, at least not in the sense that the right is going to say that the left is evil and they all should die. The right hasn't really hit that point. But they're going to be pushed to that point when the left literally starts wanting them dead, and that has already happened. So what's the outcome to this? What are you predicting at? The prediction, and this is not, I think, a very abstract position at all. The prediction is that violence is going to keep increasing. You're going to see political violence massively ramp up over the next 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years. And eventually it will hit the level of sort of, when I say civil war conflict, I don't mean the United States literally at war with each other, but it will hit a level of civil conflict in which people will start feeling justified in using guns, and they'll start feeling justified in using knives. and the first time someone gets shot and dies, or the first time a bunch of people get shot and die, then it will become very, very, very real to people. And it's not there yet. It's not there yet. But that will happen. That will happen. Within the next 2 years, there'll probably be some kind of shooting at some event, some political event where people get shot on purpose. And then, they'll be at the stage of, okay, we've hit a point of conflict where there is not only no going back, but there is no going forward. And at that point, the fractionation of American society will massively accelerate more than it already has. Any questions? I usually don't get political with these kinds of things, but I live in the United States, so these things are relevant to me. It will come up against the wrong people in these days. Well, that will happen. Well, then, the left, in continuing their acts of violence, they're going to justify the right arming themselves. How should I say? Using offense as a means of defense. Who will win the war? The side that has more bullets. We've gone through these cycles before. Not in a long time. Not in a long, long time. Nothing like this in American society, actually. There's no prior precedent for this in the United States. That's what makes it interesting. There's nothing really you can quite compare this to. You have to go back pretty far in other countries' histories. Places like France or, let's say Rome. I think they're trying to sort of insert themselves into a conflict with that one. One of the things that is interesting, and I'm not the first person to say this, but it's one of the first times in, do you think the left's turned towards absolute moral high ground certain universities? It did. It started with Marxism in Russia, and then that spread to the United States, and then that sort of ideological virus infected everything. But I think fringe elements are be ostracized. No, they won't. They won't, because the media at large has refused to ostracize them or condemn them. The thing that's interesting about the current situation is that this is the first time. What questions would you ask the Dem? I wouldn't ask them anything. I'd give a fuck about the Democrat. I mean, I could care less, honestly. It would just be a bunch of gotcha questions to make them look bad. Like I have no interest in any of them as candidates. The thing that I was trying to say, the thing that is interesting, is that this is the first time you've ever had sort of a civil conflict when the side that is the least well-armed is the side that sort of has the control of the public sphere. The brutal reality is that the vast majority of basically gun owners, people who are willing to use offense that way, truly, they're all on the right. It's not the left. So when it comes down to a truly savage scenario, the left, the people on the left, they're willing to promote the idea of violence and say that there should be violence. They're not the ones who are going to be committing the violence. Can independents unite and tackle the two-party machine? No. You can't. You can you could do this. You could break apart the fabric of the United States, but you're still going to escalate the violent situation. There is no peace, because that's just not happening in the next 20 years, so. There shall be no reconciliation. Yeah, perhaps. Maybe with the military, aren't they? Yeah, well, the military skews conservative as well, so. The UK is the same at the moment. The UK definitely is. The UK has a lot of problems. A lot of the Western democracies do, unfortunately. People got sold out by their leaders. The elites sold everybody out. All right, guys, gotta go. Talk to you all again. Love you all.